Okay, I think we can get started now. So thank you for joining me today. My name is Juan Vasquez. I'm the Customer Support Manager for Novo Software. And on today's webinar, we're going to focus on our newly released FCS Express 6 Flow Cytometry Clinical Edition. Um, I'd like to focus on a lot of the new features that are now available in FCS Express 6 and also give a high-level overview of getting started using the software. Um, for starters, I'd like to just show you several examples of different tools that are available in FCS Express and also different things that you can do to help analyze your data using our software. So I think the first thing we can talk about is the ability to create reports using FCS Express. So typically in many clinical labs, chances are you're probably using a pretty basic software. So you collect a set of tubes for a patient, and the software that you're using is somewhat limited into how it could take that data and produce actual results for you. And take that data, summarize it, give you the actual results that you need to help interpret that case, and sum it up together in a concise package. Typically, if you're analyzing 7 tubes of a patient, you probably have to print out each individual tube and all the pages that come with that tube, and you probably have many pages that are just for one sample. You have to thumb through all those pages and try to figure out all the relevant stats or all the relevant information from those pages. Here in FCS Express, what we can do is we can take that data, we can display it on a number of pages where we can take data from different tubes, put it on the same page. We can create whatever sequence of gates, apply colors, we can create whatever stats, and then what we can do is we can use FCS Express to take this data and summarize for it and present it to us as results. So here in this particular example, I'm taking some 10 color data where I have several tubes that are being analyzed for this one patient across different pages within this template. So as I click from page to page in this template, I can see different plots that are coming from particular tubes. I'm looking at different analytes in those tubes. So you'll see a lot of these plots have stats that come from that are relevant to those plots. But what I'd like to do is I'd like a way to actually have a way to summarize this. And what we can do in FCS Express is we can use tables to help summarize this in a report type format. So that way I can look, see all the relevant stats for certain cells of interest, and I can see this quick, clear, and easily here within this report page within my template. Okay. Another example of this template format that will give you a report type format for your data is this particular template that I've created a couple years ago. I created a template to go over stem cell enumeration. And as part of this, I had a page where I just gave a basic overview of what the application was, and then on the next pages, what I did was I created plots to help display my data. Okay. Now, chances are these plots here are just a means to an end. So basically, I want to take these plots and I want the software to actually do the work for me and try to summarize my data and do any number crunching that's available or needs to be done as part of my data. So in this particular sample, I have a set of 4 tubes. I have 2 control tubes and I have a patient that I'm running in duplicate. So what I'm going to do is first of all load my data. So after I hit the plus sign, I'll have this window pop up where I can navigate through my computer or on the network and try to find the data that I need to analyze. I can select the data and I'll open it. The software will ask me, do I want to add the next 3 files with this? And I say, yeah, absolutely. So you'll see now my data is loaded. And then once it's loaded, FCS Express displays them in their plots. So what we're doing here is we're taking our control data. We have a gating strategy that's applied to that data. We're looking at cells of interest, and then we're using the software to provide some calculations for us. Okay, so we're calculating an absolute count based off of the manufacturer's recommendation of how to calculate these stats, and we're using the range that comes from the manufacturer to determine whether or not the value that we're getting is matching what they are getting as well. Okay. So let's talk about this template a little bit first. So let me just go back to the summary page. So here you can see here that I have several tables that I've created to help summarize my data. So I have a table that's showing me patient information, and this is all information that can be extracted from your data from keywords that are written into the data header. We can look at statistics or calculations that are being performed. So in this case, I'm calculating the absolute count from each one of the two levels of QC that I'm using, the low and the high. I have a range that's being set where the user has the ability to enter into this field what they feel like what the actual range is going to be based off of the manufacturer's input, or whether they have their own established ranges in their lab. So as they type it in, then you can see how these numbers automatically update here, and the calculation is going to be determined, the software is going to determine whether or not the calculation is within that range for that QC. Okay, so all these tools are available to us to help us do this type of summary. Also, I'd like to do is I'd like to take my data across my replicates and just make sure that they're within a certain tolerance level. So in this case, what I'm doing is I'm assessing the number of beads, various absolute counts and percentages across the two different the replicates that I've collected, and I'm trying to see whether or not they're in 10% of one another. And if they are, well, I'm having the software tell me, yeah, it's okay, this looks pretty good. Or if it didn't, then the software would tell me that as well, based off of some conditions I've included here as part of this analysis. What I've also done is, since we're looking at stem cell enumeration, this is a rare event analysis, so there are certain event criteria that needs to be met to make these stats statistically relevant. So what I've done is I've set up certain conditions where if it turns out I've collected enough events to make this a relevant analysis, well, I'm telling the software to say yes. Tell me that everything is good, everything is okay, this should be a legitimate data. So I've done that by telling the software to spit out yes if it turns out that I have a certain threshold of events, and I've also formatted this font to turn green if it turns out it's okay. So if it's okay, it'll be a green yes. If it's not, it'll be a bold red no. Okay, so a lot of these tools and features we can incorporate in the software. Okay, and again, what we're doing here is we're using these pages where we're creating the plots to help us get to these results. And we can use a lot of our tools to help display our data in different ways, such as using a bar chart to do a comparison between different samples or different stats. Okay, so here's another example I'd like to show you. So this is a template where we're looking at lot to lot variability. Okay, so we're doing a new lot to old lot comparison. But I wanted to show this to you just to highlight one of the new features that we've added in FCS Express 6, specifically the ability to create a spreadsheet. Okay, so for those of you that have used Excel, in a spreadsheet we can enter all these numbers and we can do a lot of number crunching. So what we've done is we've inserted a tool so that way you can do a lot of that number crunching, a lot of that statistical analysis that has historically been done in Excel. You could do this right in the software. So you don't have to take your data, you don't have to export it out, and you don't have to go through the time and the trouble and the effort to actually go through the process of analyzing your data, exporting your data, then analyzing it in Excel or whatever software you're using uh, to to calculate statistics. You can do this all here in the software. So you'll see that the spreadsheet is simply just another object that we can insert for those of you that are familiar with our software. But we'll go over this in a little bit more detail later when I start talking about the basic functionality of the software. But again, once we enter it, we can type in here like we would with any spreadsheet, but what we can also do is we can take data directly from our plots, from whatever patient data that we're analyzing, and just drag and drop it into these spreadsheet cells. Okay, so these are all live numbers. So if I actually move to gate, you would actually see all these numbers update in real time. Let me see if I can find my gate. So as I move these around, then you can see how all the numbers update, not only in the plots or the bar charts, but also the spreadsheet as well. So this spreadsheet, again, has a lot of the same functionality that you would see in Excel. So not only can we put stats in here, we can perform calculations. So that's what this ratio is right here. So we would simply just type in a formula just like we would in Excel, where we put an equal sign, just select the cells that are going to make up the body of that formula, and then we can simply just copy and paste it, either just by doing the shortcuts Control C, Control V to copy and paste, or we could just highlight the corner and just drag this down to automatically format that for us. Okay. Now with the spreadsheet, what we can also do is we could do some conditional formatting, and we can do that for color scales or with error bars or an icon set, or we can make our own rules based off of other rule types are available here on the software. So again, we can format this where maybe we want a cell to turn red if it turns out it's above or below a certain criteria. All these tools, just like they are in Excel, are available here with our integrated spreadsheets in FCS Express. Okay. Now, once we create these spreadsheets, then what we can do is we can use our charting tools, such as our bar charts, our pie charts, or our scatter plots, to take that information and display it just like you would in Excel. Okay. So again, I simply just insert a bar chart, and that's what I have here, and I'm just displaying the data here within this spreadsheet. Okay. And you can just click on the X or Y axis, and then you can see here all the information that's here is the same as the information that's up in the header. Okay, and I can do that with either these bar charts, these scatter plots, or even with the pie chart, which I don't have here, but it's the same idea. Now, as part of these these bar charts or these plotting tools, what we can do is we can provide error bars. Okay, so I do have a column here where if I just open this up a little bit, where I have a number just indicative of some type of error, standard deviation, whatever it is. Okay. Then I can have the software take that number and display it in the form of an error bar for each one of these values to tell me what the amount of error is that can be estimated for each value or each input. And it's the same thing with these scatter plots, where each dot has error bars around it to designate the amount of allowable error for that dot. Okay. Now, as part of this template, what I'd also like to show you is that one of the new features that we now have is the ability to link markers together. Okay. So now what we can do is we can simply link markers together. So if I just take this endpoint, I can actually just take this endpoint and just drag it on to this particular marker to kind of link these two halves up. Okay. And then when I get my mouse over a vertex, you'll see that my cursor turns into a plus sign. And now, rather than have to control two separate histogram markers, I can just control one just by controlling that one point. Okay. Another way we can actually link different markers together is just by dragging and dropping. Okay. So let's say I actually wanted to link these two markers together. This is my CD4 new lot. This is my CD4 old lot. If I wanted to link these two markers, I could just take this marker, drag it over here, and then once I do that, if I move this around, you'll see how that one automatically changes too. Okay. Now this plot, you can see here that the high bound is actually linked to the low bound here, so that way this moves in unison as well. And then you'll see that also apply over here because these are linked as well. Okay. So another thing that we can do is we can simply just drag and drop a statistic. So if I had this high bound, I could take this, I could drag it over here. Okay. And that high bound will automatically take the value for whatever the value is that you're dragging on top of it. Okay. So in this case, we're talking about 18-bit data where the max value is 262.144. That's why the high bound snapped up all the way up to the upper end of my plot. Okay, so a lot of cool tools to help us link our markers together. This was a feature that was requested many times by various customers over the years, and we've finally been able to implement it in a convenient and easy an intuitive way. Okay, so what I'd also like to show you now is another new feature that we have in FCS Express called our Standard Operating Procedure Builder. Okay, and what our Standard Operating Procedure Builder is, it allows us to create a template where we can build instructions into that template. Each of those instructions can be as detailed as you want them to be, but what they can also have is they can have conditions and criteria that are in part of those instructions that would prevent a user from going on to the next step of the SOP until the conditions for the previous step have been met. So I just want to quickly show you an example of a type of SOP that we've created. Okay. So here's an SOP where we're looking at a pretty typical application in the clinical lab where you're using a particular bead set to do some type of instrument maintenance. Okay. So as part of this, you'll see now that with our interface, you'll see that there's a new tab for quality. From this quality tab, there's an SOP section where we can now access this SOP window. And the idea is that we can simply add different steps for this SOP just by clicking on the plus sign. And then we can format this where we provide a short description or instructions. And then what we can also do is we can provide conditions that would allow the user to proceed to the next step. Okay, so here I don't have one, so I can actually just go on when I do decide to run this. I'll just be able to freely go on to the next step without having to worry about any conditions that need to be met. But what we can do is we can provide conditions where maybe I don't want to go on to the next step if it turns out I don't really have any data in my data list. Okay. So the way this works is we'll simply just run this SOP. Okay, so from here I'm just going to click on Run SOP. And then this window pops up that has all the instructions that we've written written up as part of that step. Okay. Now this window just floats over my layout, but what I can do with this, I can also dock this. So I'm just going to dock it in there, get it out of the way. And then simply what we're going to do is we're just going to navigate from step to step. Okay. So as part of this SOP window, you'll see down here that there are these two triangles where I can either go ahead or go back in my steps. If it's possible for me to go forward, I can simply just click on the right triangle to move to the next step. Okay. So here what I want to do is I'm going to just follow the instructions where I click on the blue plus sign and just navigate to my data. Okay. And then once that condition has been met, I'm just going to again go to the next step. And then as part of this SOP, what we've done is we've incorporated a new tool that allows us to either hide or make visible different objects of our analysis. So whether we want to hide plots or text boxes or pages, we can now hide those based off of different steps or different conditions however we need to define them. Okay, so in this particular case, we are able to annotate these SOPs by just making these text boxes and putting whatever text we want in these text boxes. And these text boxes will appear based off of different conditions. Okay, so you'll see now that we now have the ability to determine whether or not this object is visible. So we could do that always or never, or we can customize that. In this case, we have a new set of tokens where we can look at a particular SOP step, and if it turns out we are on the SOP step, then that particular object will appear. Okay? And it's the same idea with pages. So we can hide pages as well, where again we can make it always visible, never visible, or we can customize that visibility based off of a particular condition or a sequence of conditions. Okay. So as I move forward, you'll see now that I'm at a step where I actually need to do something to make sure that to allow me to go to the next step. So now if I just hover my mouse over here, over this right arrow, you'll see now that it says cannot move to step. The reason it won't allow me to move to step is because I just need to verify that this particular step has been performed. Okay, so once I click that, now I can go on to my next step, and then again I could just verify whatever the steps are for this SOP and then just move on. Okay, so as part of this SOP feature, we do have the ability now to create a table within a text box where we can list all the different steps of the SOP, and that table will give us a brief description, what the step number is, and the date that that particular step has been created. Okay, and in this case we do have this integrated as part of this layout. So let me just undo that. So if I actually just show all my hidden pages, you'll see that this is actually a 13-page document where if I just go to one of my pages, you'll see here that I already have a table created as part of this template. Okay, so again, all these features are available as SOP. It's a really neat and convenient tool where if you want to standardize an application and make it very reproducible regardless of whoever's doing this in a lab, the SOP will allow you to do that. Also, if you needed a training tool where if your lab has a constant flow of new people coming in and out of your lab, and you wanted to create some type of training tool where you had a template, you had data that you wanted to enter in that template, you can use this SOP to create steps to help guide these new users how to analyze data. Okay. So again, this SOP feature is very useful. Again, it's a new feature that we've had requests for in the past from our customers, and we were finally able to incorporate that. So another new feature that we have is something called data-specific gates. So again, those of you that are familiar with our software, you know that our gates are universal. So we don't necessarily have to recreate the same gate for each tube like other softwares do. But what we can do is if it turns out that the parameters match from different tubes that you're analyzing within a given iteration, then we can use that same gate across each one of those files. Okay, so here I have 3 different files. Each one has side scatter 45, and I have this one gate. So as I move it around, you'll see how these all move in unison because it's the same gate, and whatever stats I have calculated for this information is automatically updated here. Okay, so from the gating tab, when I click on a gate, you'll see now that there's this new tool here called data specific gate. So the reason why you would want to use a data specific gate is if it turns out that the positioning of a particular gate doesn't necessarily work for a particular sample. Okay, let's say that you're gating on scatter, and these cells of interest have moved a little bit for this one tube compared to all the other tubes. Well, now what we can do is we can tell the software that this particular gate is just going to be data specific. It's going to have its own set of coordinates, but it's still going to be the same gate as all the others. Okay, so if I select that and just click on my data specific gate tool, you'll see now that if I move my master gate, you'll see that these two will move in unison, but this one again marches to the beat of its own drummer. Okay, and you also notice that the stats update specifically for each one of those data files. Okay, so what I wanted to also show you is that as part of this data specific gates, we've added a new node in the gate navigator, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about the gate navigator a little bit further on once we start talking about the basic functionality of the software, because we've added some new tools where the gate navigator does a lot of the same things now as the gate view has historically done. Okay, but now you'll see that the gate navigator has a new node that specifies if any gate is data specific and for which file is that gate specific for. Okay, So if I had one file, or if let's say I made this one data specific too, you'll see now it's added. So again, here's my master gate. Each one of these are going to be data specific. But what if I actually want these two to have the same type of coordinates? Well, what I can do is I can come over here, I can select these, and then what I can do is I can create a group off of these. So now if I move this one, this is still the master. So if I created any new plots showing any of the new data files, it would all follow the master. But this is now a data specific group where if I move these, you'll see now that these move in unison as well. Okay. And if I wanted to delete or promote data specific gates to the master, I could simply just do that through a right click. Okay. Okay. So I think at this point what we could do is we could start talking about the basic features of FCS Express, how it works, and just the overall functionality of the software. So here, what I'll do is I'm just going to close this. And we'll just go back to the original template that we had. Okay. Okay. So far we've talked about a lot of the new features where we talked about the integrated spreadsheets, we talked about the SOP builder, we talked about the ability to uh, make things visible or not, and we can do that based off of conditions. We talked about the data specific gates. We also talked about the ability to link markers together. And there's a number of general usability improvements. Um, Hopefully you've been able to see that if you're familiar with FCS Express 4 or 5 or any of the previous iterations of FCS Express, you can see that we've also updated the interface here as well. We update the interface with every iteration of FCS Express that we release. Okay. We've also given our users the ability to add tokens in the plot header and footers. And I'll show you how to do that a little bit later. We've also added the ability for our users to display stats in scientific notation. Okay, we have had it has been requested a number of times by various customers over the years. And again, like the other new features, we're happy to finally implement that here in the software. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to simply create a new page. And then we're just going to talk about the basics of the software. Okay. So again, for those of you that are familiar with FCS Express or not, what we do is we borrow our interface, we borrow heavily, to be honest with you, from the Microsoft Office interface. Okay. So for those of you that are familiar with PowerPoint, you'll recognize this interface rather easily. So the idea that with the ribbon has all these different tabs where each tab has all these tools that are grouped together according to functionality. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off by just inserting different objects to display our data. So I'm just going to go to my Insert tab. And from the Insert tab, you'll see that there are many different categories here to break up all the different objects that we can use to display our data or give us information that we need as part of this data, or as part of this analysis. So if I wanted to insert a text box or a picture or some shapes or a 1D plot or a 2D plot, I can simply just click on the tool that I want, just click on my document, and then FCS Express is going to prompt you for the file that you want to view within that plot. I'm going to select this file and click open, and there it is. Okay. So now I could, if I want to manipulate this particular object, I can move it around. I could resize it, reshape it as I need to. I can also undo, redo. And I can still use the keyboard shortcuts Control Z and Control Y to undo and redo as I need to. But with this plot, if I wanted to show some parameters that make sense to me or that will help me start gating my cells of interest, I can simply just click on the X or Y axis, and then I'll see something more recognizable. Okay. So I'd like to talk about the data list a little bit. During the example that I showed you about the SOP, I briefly mentioned dockable windows. So the data list is what we call a dockable window. What that means is we can embed this as part of our template so that way it's always there. Now the data list itself is actually this bridge between FCS Express and Windows. Okay, so anytime you need to work with data, you simply just add it to the data list and there it is. Okay, when we create a template to analyze a particular application, the idea is that once we load the data into the data list, FCS Express will automatically load the data into the plots. It'll know that particular files go in specific plots. It'll know that assignment automatically based off of their positioning in the data list. Okay. This data list here is actually really useful as well, not only just because it's helping me manage my data, but what I can do is I can also drag and drop to create more plots from this. So let's say I wanted another plot from this file. I can just simply take this, drag it on, and I can select the plots that I want, like that. Okay. So whether I'm selecting a single plot, a single file, or multiple files, I can tell the software to use that selection for all the files that I'm dragging onto my layout. Okay. So you're probably wondering, how did all these files get in this data list? Well, when I'm creating a template from scratch, once I insert a plot, FCS Express will take all those similar files that were in that root folder and add them into the data list under the assumption that you probably want to work with them as you're creating this new template. So again, it's convenient so that way you can just go to the data list, just drag and drop, and just grab what you need when you need it. Okay. As part of this docked layout, the docked data list, what we can also do is pin it to enable an auto hide feature. Okay. So it retracts into the side of the document. We don't necessarily need to see it all the time, but if we need to grab something from it, we can just bring our mouse over there and it reappears itself. Okay. Or you can just unpin it, just drag it out, and just leave it as a free floating window if you want. Okay. All right. So now with these plots, okay. So now I have all these different plots. What I can do is I can select all these plots. I can simply just drag them, or if I just hit Control A, I can select them all from the Home tab. If I want to align these from the top or distribute them evenly, I can simply do that from my Align tool. What I can also do is I can format these as I need to. So let's say I wanted to format the information in a single plot or in all these plots. If I wanted to do a single plot, I can simply just right click on a plot and choose Format to format that object. Every object in FCS Express has a format menu from which we can select different categories that can be formatted for that object. So if I format a plot, you'll see all the different categories that are here, such as the title. Okay, so let's say I wanted to format the information that's in the title. Okay, I could simply just click in here. I could just insert from the drop-down menu where I just take keywords from my data, or I can take the file name with a path or with no path, or I could just take the value for the $FIL keyword that's written to the file header for your data. Or maybe I want to know the information as to what kind of gate is applied, which gate is applied to this particular plot. Okay, so whether we use plain text or a combination of these, we can easily just do that and format it that way. And we can also format the aesthetics. So if I wanted to have a background or some shadows, or I'd want to change the font and the sizing or the alignment as to where that title appears, I can do that. Or if I wanted to change the font styling, I can simply just click on font, choose the font that I want and the styling for that font or the color, and then the software automatically will update that. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to go black and maybe a little bit bigger, I can preview that, and then you can see that here. Okay. Okay. If I wanted to format these at once, I could simply just select these, and then you'll see that there's a Format tab here in the ribbon, where again, I can format my titles for those multiple objects. And then format it as I need to. And again, you can format many different items for the plots that you've selected all at once as you need to. Okay. So if you wanted to format the overlays or how the axes are formatted, again, you can simply just select them and then just format from the Format tab. Okay. So here, let me change these parameters. Okay. So now how do we create gates? So you'll see that there's a gating tab. So yeah, you guessed it. We'll just simply select a gating tool from our gating tab, like a polygon gate, and then we'll simply just gate around our cells of interest. Okay. So with the polygon gate, each click of the mouse is going to give us a different vertex on that gate. And once we close that gate, we'll be presented with this Create New Gate window, where in this window I can give it a name, if I could spell it correctly. I can give it a color. And what I can also do is emphasize these events on my color dot plots. So if I select that tool, click OK, you'll see that what FCS Express does, it increases the dot size for those gated events. And if those events are being displayed in other plots downstream, you'll also see them emphasized like that. Okay. And as I move my gate around, you can see how the software keeps that emphasis intact. So it's a really cool feature. So if you're looking to backgate in a population, or if there is a really tiny population located within your sample, you can use this as a tool to help emphasize and make those events pop out and stand out. Okay. So historically, with a lot of the common softwares that people use to analyze their data, if they need to replace a gate, chances are they probably had to delete that gate and start over again. And that could be a big deal, because if you delete a gate, chances are you probably have statistics that are associated with that gate, and you probably have a hierarchy that relies heavily on whatever gate you're deleting. If that's the case, if you delete that gate, chances are you're going to have to recreate everything from scratch again, which is a real nuisance. But here in FCS Express, what we can do is, if we need to recreate a gate or replace it with a new gate, what I can do is I can simply just select my Replace an Existing Gate option here in my Create New Gate window. Okay, so by selecting that radial, I can choose the gate that I want to replace from the drop-down menu. So whether I have one gate or 20 gates or 100 gates throughout my layout, I can simply just select the gate that I'm replacing, click OK, and then you'll see that automatically that gate is replaced with this new gate that I've used. Okay, and then also as a result, whatever hierarchy, whatever stats, or whatever plots we're looking at that gate, they will automatically update as well. Okay, so how do I apply this gate to these plots? Okay, well, I can simply just select a plot and go from to gating to my gating tab, and you'll see that there's a current gate drop-down menu where I can simply just select the gate from that window. Okay, once I select that gate, you'll see that my plots will update, and also the information in that plot title will update as well. Okay, what I can also do is I can just take a gate and drag and drop it onto another plot. Okay, and then the events within that gate will be what's displayed in that plot. Now I can also take this gate to make a new plot based off of those gated events, where if I just take that and just drag it down here, I get a copy of that plot but drill down on those gated events. So then again, I can just simply just choose my parameters, and there I have a new plot that's a copy of that plot. But now I'm looking at different parameters. Okay. So here, let's just quickly create some more gates. So whether I create a freeform gate or a rectangular gate, I can simply create whatever gates I need to help analyze my data and look at my cells of interest. Okay. So we have this tool called the gate view. So the gate view is just another object that we can insert, where if I just draw it here. The gate view is going to show me all my gates in my analysis and how they relate to one another. Okay? So it's going to show me the gate, it's going to show me my parent's gate, it's going to show me all my children. If I need to edit a gate, I can simply just double click on one of these and I can edit the properties for that gate. So if I wanted to rename this, I can just type in there. If I wanted to recolor it, I could choose a new color. If I want to emphasize, I can do that here as well. But one of the new things that are available in FCS Express 6 is now the ability to control this gate, about what can be done for the editing of this gate. So if I wanted to allow people to edit this gate, in other words, if I wanted to allow people to move it or delete it or do anything to it to modify it, I can either grant that permission, deny that permission, or I can customize when that particular action can be performed on that gate. Okay. Again, new tool for FCS Express 6. So before I mentioned how the gate view and the gate navigator have been unified. So again, if I just go to my view, I'm going to open up my gate navigator. And again, this gate navigator is just a dockable window where I can just dock it either to the left or the right or on the bottom, or I can dock it within another window. But the idea is with this gate navigator, I can do a lot of the same things that I did within the gate view here within the gate navigator. So again, if I wanted to rename a gate, I can just double click on it and then format it as I did before. Or if I wanted to rearrange my gates, make one a child of another, or I wanted to undo that, I could do that all within the gate navigator. Okay. So again, there's a unification between the gate navigator and the gate view. Okay. So from the gate tab, this is also where we can add quadrants and markers to our plots. Okay. So if I wanted to add a quad to a plot, I can simply just click on this tool, click on my plot, and there it is. Okay. And the way we can manipulate this quad is simply just grabbing it by the vertex and just moving it around, and you'll see that we provide stats by default for each one of those quads. So whatever these stats are, so by default we use percent gated, but you can customize your preferences to provide you other stats. So if you are more interested in percent of all, or maybe you want to see the arithmetic mean for the X or Y axis in each of these quads, then you can format your preferences to give you those stats as well. Okay. If I wanted a marker, I can simply just drag a marker in a plot. And as you saw earlier, let's say I actually wanted to link different markers together. I can simply just take this and I can just hover it until it turns into, my cursor turns into a plus sign, and now you'll see that they're linked. Okay, so now rather than have to move two separate markers, I can just move them together at the same time. Okay. If you right click on this plot and format it, from the markers category, you'll see that there's now these new sections where we can determine what the coordinates are for the low and the high bounds for each of the markers. Okay, and you'll also see that we now have the ability to lock the coordinates or provide a statistic, a variable statistic, for which that coordinate for either low or high bound is going to update. Okay, and as you saw earlier, there's different ways of how we can do that, whether we drag and drop it or just apply a stat to that. Again, by dragging and dropping, it's all fairly easy and pretty intuitive on how you can do that, and really convenient. Okay, all right. So I have a pretty decent amount of gates and markers and quads here. With these markers and quads, what we can do is we can convert these to gates if we need to. By default, we don't make markers or quads gates, but if I wanted to make this M1 marker, for example, a CD3 positive gate, so I can look at these CD3 positive cells in another plot, I can simply just right click on this plot and convert that particular marker and link it to a new gate. Okay. Again, I can just give my gate a name, a color, and click OK. And again, you'll see that it's added to my gate view. If I wanted to add this to another plot, I can just take this, and now that plot is just looking at my CD3 positive cells. Okay. And then if I wanted to reestablish the hierarchy here, where these two gates were a child, I could just drag and drop them on top of the CD3, and voila. Okay. It's the same idea with these quads. So if I just right-clicked on this plot with the quads, I can convert a quad to a gate. So whether I do each individual quadrant or I can do a whole half, I can convert and link whatever quad I want. Give my gate a name and a color, and it's added. Okay. And then as I move my quad around, you'll see how that gate will update based off of that color. Okay. So now how do I get stats for this? Okay. So simply I can just right click on a plot. I can choose gate stats or quad stats or histogram stats. Okay. And these all pretty much work in the same way, where if I just right click on one of these, I can format these as I need to. So if I wanted to, just get rid of a column, I could just simply deselect it. Or if I format this, I could format the stats for this box where I deselect the stats, or maybe I wanted to change the amount of decimals, or maybe I wanted to change the font and provide a different styling like I did for the title, the plot title earlier. Okay. So if I wanted to change it to a Broadway, bold, and make it silver, there it is. Okay. Or I can just undo that. So if you're analyzing, a number of different files for one patient, chances are you probably don't want a bunch of these stat boxes. What we would like to do is we would like to have the ability to summarize our data, or have a tool to help summarize our data. In FCS Express, we have two different ways of how we can do that. Okay. So first thing we can do is we can simply just insert a text box, and within this text box we can create a table. Just like you would create a table in Word, PowerPoint, Office, Excel, whatever. Okay. So we'd simply just designate how many rows, how many columns that particular table is going to be. This table can be formatted like other tables where we maybe want to merge. We have a full text editor where maybe we want to provide some type of shading or some type of fill color for that cell. And then again, we can type in here, provide some type of label. And maybe I want to center that text, bold it, italicize it, do whatever. Okay. So now what I could do is I can simply just insert information into this table. Okay. So maybe I want some type of ID. I could just take a stat from here, drag and drop it. Or maybe I want a stat. I can take a gate, just drag it into a cell, and then tell the software what kind of gate I want. So maybe I want the number of events from that gate. Again, as I move my gates around, you can see how those numbers automatically update. Or maybe I just want to take my marker, just drag it in there. Or I wanted to take a plot. Maybe I wanted to take some keyword from my data. I could take my plot, drag it in there, tell the software give me a keyword, and then I can navigate for all and use whatever keywords are available with that file that was being viewed within that. So maybe I want the cytometer serial number. Okay. We can create these tables rather easily, and we can use these tables to help summarize our data. So whether we're analyzing one page or 100 pages, we can just pull in whatever information we want from any of those pages into this table to provide a nice, sweet summary. What we can also do is we can now use the spreadsheets. Okay, so like you saw earlier, if I just insert a spreadsheet, I'll just give the spreadsheet a name. Again, the spreadsheet is just like any other object. I can resize it, I can move it around, do whatever. But the idea is that I can use the spreadsheet and just fill it up with whatever information I want. So let's say I wanted these particular stats. I could just take these stats, just drag them in, and there it is. Okay. So within this spreadsheet, maybe I want to look at the average of these cells. Up here in my ribbon, you'll see there's a Spreadsheet tab that's now available where I can format the conditional formatting, or I want to insert columns or rows, or maybe I want to format the cells, the number, or maybe I want to do some type of formatting to the border or the fill for that cell. But you also see now that there's a formulas tab as well. So for example, maybe I want to just take that data and sum out the average. But we also have a number of different functions that are also available in Excel that are now available here in FCS Express for you to perform on your data. So whether you're looking for compatibility or you just want some type of information functions, statistical functions, date and time, math and trigonometry, logical, even financial functions. So if you're looking to calculate your mortgage, or you're trying to put away for retirement, you can certainly do that here within our software. Okay. And again, if I wanted to provide some type of conditional formatting, I could simply just select these cells and then just choose the type of formatting that I want to apply. Okay. And then once I have a spreadsheet, if I wanted to display my data in a bar chart or something, I could simply just insert that object, and then we can select on the X or Y axis and show whatever the column is. But I can also format this spreadsheet to use the values in that first row as a label here. Okay. Whatever you need to do, all these tools are available to help analyze your clinical data. Okay, so now that we have all these stats, chances are we probably need to export this in some way, shape, or form. Okay, so that's where our batch processing capabilities come in. So we are kind of running out of time a little bit, so I'll try to go through batch processing fairly quickly while just touching on the major points. So up here in the ribbon, there's a batch tab where the idea is that for batch processing, we would create a list of batch processing actions for which the software will perform for all the files that we need to analyze. Okay. In this particular example, here we have 9 files. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to produce an action for the software to, for which the software will export my data for those actions. So for example, if I wanted the software to print out my data, I would just simply click on the print action. I'd format the properties for that print action. So whether I want to change the printer or what pages are printed or the copies of pages or how it's printed, I can just click OK, and then you'll see that the action is added to the list. As I fill up this list with different actions for the different formats in which my data is going to be exported, if I didn't want to perform one of these actions, I could simply just deselect the checkbox and the software will skip over that particular action. Okay. Also, you'll see that we have the ability to take our data and save it within our template without overwriting the master template. And we would do that here through the save layout action. So if I click on that, I can save an action where the software automatically saves a copy of my data embedded in my template without overwriting the template. And I can designate where the software is going to save this and how it's going to name it. So when I click on that, I can simply just click on the folder. Again, just tell the software where I'm going to save it and how I'm going to name it. But what I can also do is I can have the software extract unique information from my data and use that information in the naming of the file for me. Okay? I can simply just do that by clicking on this T here. So for example, maybe I wanted to take a keyword from my data that was specific for some type of patient identification number that I wanted to use and name this file, in the naming of this file. I could click on the T here, I'll click on keyword, and I'll have the software insert that. And then I can click on my keyword and just click on the drop down menu and then just navigate through all the different keywords that are in my file and just find whatever it is that's suitable to provide me some type of identification number. Okay. If you know what it is, if you know the keyword off the top of your head, you can simply just type it into. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to embed this so that way the software will save my template and the data that's being viewed in it all as one document, one whole document. And now I'll click OK. So again, it's added to the list. So we have the ability to export to PDF. And again, it's the same idea. So with PDF, what we can do is we can save each iteration separately, or if we want to, we can combine them all into the same PDF. We can also append to existing PDFs, and then we can determine how we're going to save that appended PDF. Again, just like before, we're just going to designate where we're going to save this. And then have the software automatically name this for us based off of that same token that we used earlier. Again, it's added to my list. So we also have the ability to save pictures of our data. So whether I wanted to save a whole page as a picture, or maybe I wanted to save a particular plot as a picture, I have that ability, and I can choose from 6 different formats for which I want to save my data as a picture. Okay, so this is ideal that if in cases where if you want to upload your data to LIS or have some type of integration process where you want to take pictures of your data and post them up on a website somewhere, what we can do is we can have this and integrate this as part of the batch processing step. Okay. What we can also do is take our data and export it to Excel. So simply I'm just going to click on Excel column mode. And again, I'm just going to designate where I'm going to save this and how I'm going to name it. And then in this case, what we would do is we would simply just add stats that are going to be exported as part of this. Okay. And we would just drag and drop whatever stats we have. So if I had a table like this, I could just simply take this table, drag it on. Or maybe I wanted a particular stat from my spreadsheet to be exported. I could just take that cell and just drag it up there. Or maybe I had one of these tables and maybe I just wanted all this information here. Where I could simply select it and just drag and drop it. Okay. Either way, it's really easy to add information to the Excel export. Also, FCS Express has the ability to integrate with our LIS system, and it would simply just be another option here through the Add Report. We have the ability to export data in text, which is the most basic way of integrating with your LIS system. So if your LIS system will accept a flat file, you can simply just include a text report and just include whatever data, just like we did here with the Excel sheet, as part of that text export. If your LIS system needs a little bit more customization, where the export the exported file from FCS Express needs to be sent in XML, we can also do that for you as well. Okay, that's an additional fee, but we can still customize that. We often customize solutions for our customers. You actually see here that we have worked with many different LIS vendors, and we do often uh, have to customize and develop a solution right at the customer site based off of whatever vendor that they're using. We often work with the vendors closely to according to whatever specifications they have for a particular site. But getting back to this now, so you'll see now that I have 4 different actions. Okay, so I'm actually going to skip over print. Now, if I wanted the software to run this, all I need to do is just go over here to my batch tab and just click Run Batch Process. So now if I click that, my progress window shows up. It'll show me all the different actions that are being executed and all the different iterations that are going to be completed. So I have 9 samples. You'll see how my data list will cycle over here and how the data updates in the background and all the different exports that are being performed at the same time. Now if I open up this window on the side here, you can see all the different files that are being added in real time. And then the completion, here's my Excel sheet with all the different stats that we have exported for each one of the samples. So again, each stack gets a column, each sample that we're exporting gets a row. If I look at my root folder, you'll see that I have a layout and a PDF for each one of the samples that I've analyzed. For each of those 9 samples, I have 2 different files, so that's 18 files plus the Excel sheet and whatever exports I want, all done within a click. We also have the option where if you wanted the software to unconditionally pause between each iteration, we can certainly do that just by clicking this option and just making that part of the process. Okay, so now how do we go about creating this as a template? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make this a panel specific template. And the way we do that is simply just by, you'll see here in the batch tab that there's a panels tool that we can select. You can also select that from down here at the bottom of the window where it says no panel is active. If I click on that, it's going to bring me to the same place where I can simply add a panel. I'll give my panel a name. I'm going to designate how many tubes my panel is. If I want, I can actually put some type of description in there for the tube in this panel. I click OK, and then I'll click OK again to make it active. And once it's active, you'll see here how my data list changes, where now I have another column that's going to show me the label for each one of those tubes in my panel. In this case, I have 9 one-tube panels. Okay. Now I'm going to go to File, Save As, and I'm going to save this as a template. So I'm just going to go back to my export folder where we're saving this before. I'm going to call this my template. What I'm going to do is I'm also going to save it unlinked. So now if I just click Save, if I close this, I can open up my desktop folder. There's my template. If I just double click on it, it'll automatically open the same template that we had before. Okay. If I just go to page 1, there's all the information that we had out. If I just want to add my data to the data list, I can just click on the plus sign, select the files, and you see everything automatically updates. If I didn't need to analyze all these files, I can simply just select them, and just click on the red X in the toolbar of my data list just to remove them from analysis. Okay. So again, you can create an analysis as this really neat, concise template, and you can really standardize your analysis within your lab and make it very reproducible. Okay. So unfortunately, we've run out of time. But in summary, what I'd like to say is that hopefully you can see that FCS Express Clinical Edition is um, is a fairly intuitive software where it's pretty easy to get around. You could easily just insert different objects to display your data. It's easy to format things. If you just want to click on the X or Y axis, just choose the parameters to view within that plot. You can see that the overall interface of the software provides a pretty easy learning experience and definitely enhances your use to help you analyze your data in a very efficient manner. Overall, FCS Express 6 is a pretty sophisticated data analysis and reporting software. It's all in the same package. So everything you need to do to analyze your data is contained within this one software. So that way you don't waste time going from one software, bouncing to another software, going back to another software if it turns out you need to reanalyze and re-export to go back to do whatever statistical crunching that you need to do or whatever type of reporting you've traditionally done. FCS Express 6 is now compatible with both Windows and Mac OS platforms. So for any Mac lovers out there, we now have a solution for you where it's now a native application for that environment. You no longer need a virtual machine to run FCS Express. And also, FCS Express 6 offers a quick and responsive real-time analysis of your data. So as you saw, as you move your gates around, you get real-time feedback for your data. All the stats update, whatever events were being viewed, and other plots downstream automatically update as well. If you have any questions about anything you've seen in today's webinar, please feel free to contact us at support@denovosoftware.com, or you can visit us at our website denovosoftware.com or fcsexpress.com, and you can download a free 30-day trial that you can use with your own data. Okay? So we'll just take a couple minutes to ask some questions. Okay, well, again, thank you for joining me in today's webinar. If you have any questions, please contact us at support@denovosoftware.com. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for joining me in today's webinar. Thank you and have a good day.